Hey, happy Thursday again. I'm Bob Krell, founder and publisher of Healthy Indoors magazine. And hey, thanks for being with us again today. Another great show. Super excited. Our guest today has a wealth of knowledge, lots of experience in the industry on a varied set of areas. So we'll get into that shortly. A lot of stuff happens on our Healthy Indoors online global community, which is where many of you may be watching the show today. We have a lot of that ungated out open to the general public, but we have so much more available to those who are members of the community. We just recently, this Tuesday, launched our AMA, our Ask Me Anything series. Cole Stanton was our first guest, and we had a great Q&A session with him this past Tuesday. That's available to community members. You can actually watch the recordings of that. And we'll be doing that on a monthly basis. So we're pretty excited about it. Again, you can learn more about how to get on the Healthy Indoors community at global.healthyindoors.com. That's where that's located. So we'll be right back with our guest right after this word. So for over 29 years, Derrick Denis has provided professional environmental consulting and industrial hygiene services. Derrick has worked as both environmental consultant and remediation work across the United States. He holds or has held numerous industry relevant certifications. He has managed and performed over 20,000 indoor environmental projects. Quite a large number, quite frankly. So, without further ado, I'd like to welcome Derrick to the show. Hey, buddy, how are you?
Bob Krell, the man, the myth, the legend. How are you, sir?
You know what? I'm doing well. And you look fabulous as always. I mean, you're in a nice.
My beard is gray. You can say.
Well, well, my beard is great too, but that's why I don't grow it anymore. I used to wear the goatee thing years ago when it was dark. But now it's a dead giveaway of my, many years on the planet. So that's the same reason I shave the sides too, because it's almost white.
When I was 22 years old in this industry, I went into a meeting and told these folks in a conference room, I said, here's your problem. And to fix it, you need to do A, B, and C. And they looked at me and basically just outright ignored what I had to say. So I went in the hall and I got my assistant, who happened to have a gray beard. And I said, I just told these fine gentlemen that this is their problem, and to fix it, they need to do A, B, and C. What do you think? And my assistant with the gray beard went, yep. And they sprung into action. And I said, I have got to get a gray beard. So I've spent 30 years working on it. And now people believe me, whether it's justified or not. They tend to believe, well, that guy must know what he's talking about.
So you really just invest the time to get the gray beard. It just takes a while to get it. That is the best way I've ever heard that put in my entire life. That's hysterical, buddy. I love it. But so you've had like just a ton of experience in a lot of areas in the indoor environmental, business. I mean, asbestos, lead, mold. You dealt with, this past pandemic with COVID, but and many more things.
The hot ticket right now, the hot item is, pardon the pun, but it's lithium battery fires. So okay. I think that people are, industrial hygienists, indoor environmental quality consultants need to really bone up on lithium battery fires, because they are significant. They are going to be more and more common as we put larger batteries on the road and in buildings. And it has some nuances that you need to know. All environmental issues obviously have the same framework, right? What is the hazard? How do I protect people? But there are some nuances to lithium battery fires I think people should start to bone up on if you're looking for the new, again, hot item.
And is that happening a lot in the indoor environment, or is that like you're thinking in terms of outdoor environmental? Because you do outdoor environmental work as well, right? Not just indoor.
Predominantly, we do indoor environmental work, but we do support the outdoor environment. So yeah, there are lithium batteries in your phone. There are lithium batteries in your drill. There are lithium batteries in your vehicle, your electric vehicle. But there are also buildings filled with lithium-ion batteries to supplement the power grid, for example. And What's interesting about lithium batteries is they produce their own oxygen for all intents and purposes. So you can stick them underwater once they're in thermal runaway, and they continue to burn, if you will. So how are you going to address that? What things are being emitted? How do you protect people from those things, both during the emergent event and, of course, after the smoke has cleared, quote unquote? So
And they emit a lot of toxins in the event of a lithium battery fire. There's just a lot of bad stuff coming off of those, right?
yeah, combustion byproducts in general are bad. I was once approached during, you've heard of Prop 65 in California. It's the everything
Sure.
contains cancer law. So I was approached by the company I work with. We were approached to prove that burning a manufactured log produced carcinogens. And I said, hold up the phone. I go, yeah, burning stuff produces carcinogens. Smoke is bad. That's why we leave buildings that are on fire. It's one of the reasons we leave building on fire. Obviously, burning to death is also a reason, but it's the emissions that are being pushed out that are bad. So it was funny to have to design an experiment and actually collect data to show that burning a log made of wax, diesel fuel, if you will, and compressed sawdust
Right.
produce carcinogens when you set it on fire. It was funny. I mean, it wasn't funny, but
But
it was an interesting question.
yeah, because it's interesting that you would even have to broach that. I mean, it seems almost intuitive that of course it does.
Yeah.
It's not a
Well,
surprise. Not a surprise, right?
yeah. But, when a lawyer asks you to do something, they have some, motive to do so, and they needed that data to achieve whatever mission they were trying to achieve. But um, yeah, so I've been very blessed, Bob, seriously, to have a diverse career. I have a degree in environmental science. I grew up in Oklahoma, and there was no environmental work when I graduated from college. All the oil field work was gone, and that was most of the
And
environmental
what
work.
year did you graduate? I have to ask. I'm going to date you now.
Okay, 1990. I got my
Okay.
degree in 1990.
Okay.
I'm sorry, 1994.
Okay.
And high school in 1990. But yeah, so I couldn't find a job. And of course, this is before the internet, right? So I relied on personal networks and got my first job in Huntington Beach, California. So I packed everything I owned and moved to Huntington Beach, California to work in the indoor air quality field, my first gig. And, my employer immediately gave me a bag of goodies and said, go observe, go monitor this fireproofing removal that contains asbestos. So I went to this hospital and they had built this fancy false ceiling, and I walked into the decon, and none of the workers spoke English. And so it was immediately, there was a surprise I wasn't prepared for. Was I couldn't communicate well with the people I was on this site with, but they put on their suit, I put on my suit. They put on their boots, I put on my boots. They put on their gloves, I put on my gloves. I'm watching them, I'm emulating. They put on their PAPR, powered air purifying respirator, as you know, connect the battery, turn it on, and then they climb up the ladder and they go across the ceiling, over the ducts and under the sprinkler lines, and get to this area where they're scraping asbestos off the off the I-beams, asbestos
Okay.
fireproofing off these I-beams. And then one of the guys looks at me and he says, Mira, no filtro. I said, what? No filtro. So I had put on the PAPR, I turned it on, the motor was running, but I did not put a filter on.
You just had a fan, so you basically were like really woofing it right in your face.
Yeah. And that is one of the main reasons, like right now, fit testing is a big deal for, N95 wearers because of COVID. But I take training very seriously. You can't hand somebody a safety device and just set them loose, because I could have injured myself day one of my environmental career because I did not get a proper training in my PPE. So let that be a lesson to you young people. Don't go
Mhm.
out there with PPE that you don't know how to use. But I was just new, and they said go
Yeah.
forth and do good things. But yeah, so
That's huge, though. I mean, that's a huge point, Derek. I mean, and you have to keep retraining. That was what for many years I ran a contracting, indoor environmental contracting company, and we had all the right equipment, trained everybody properly initially, tried to have supervisors always stay on top of everything, and inevitably, anytime I would walk onto a job site, somebody would be doing something stupid,
Yeah.
even though
It's
they've been
just
trained not
stuff.
to, or just, like they got all the ladder denominations you could ever want in the staging area, 6, 8, 10, 12, every type of safety rig, retractor harnesses, everything's set up to do things right. And it's like, and then you find some clown standing on top of a 6-foot ladder.
Yeah.
It's like,
It's sad. I mean,
what's
I
sad, because
tell people,
they're putting themselves at risk, right? I mean,
yeah, yeah, it's just stuff is my theme. You can have all the safety gear, the Gucci respirators and all that stuff. Not to not Gucci, but or plug Gucci, whichever you prefer that to be. But yeah, you can have all of the stuff. But if you don't know how to use it, and you don't know how to use it under stress, I carry 2 tourniquets with me everywhere I go, and I train to put those tourniquets on under stress. Having tourniquets, people think, you're crazy. What are you planning for? The apocalypse? You know what? There's a pretty good chance someone's going to get a significant cut on a project that we're on. And I want to be able to stop that bleeding as quickly as I can, so that they have a better chance of survival. But just having tourniquets doesn't make me able to execute. And so you have to practice. So training and practice with any tool, any safety tool is critically important. I have dedicated my life to this, right? So I
mhm.
really push hard to help people be ready for the foreseeable emergencies, but also the unforeseeable emergencies. If you had a good infection control program at your facility when COVID came, you were way ahead of the curve.
Absolutely.
Nobody had a COVID plan, but they had an emergent infectious agent plan. And if they had practiced that, it was night and day. I went to many hundreds of facilities where people were obviously very sick and many people dying. And the ones that had done planning, had done the tabletop exercises, not even drills, but just tabletop exercises. They knew one another. They knew what assets they had on hand. They understood their building, and they were able to reduce risk. I mean, we're not in the risk prevention business. We're in the
Right.
risk reduction business. But there was a dramatic reduction in the people who were what I call prepared. Eagle Scout.
Sure.
My license plate says be prepared. I try to live my life in that way. You can't prepare for every eventuality, but a failure to prepare really sets you back when something happens that's either expected or unexpected. So.
Well, I mean, that's especially true under stress, right? In a stressful situation, if you haven't trained to be able to at least, execute all the steps of whatever it is, whatever process it is, just under normal circumstances, there's no chance in the hell you're going to be able to do it under stress if everything goes nuts. Not going to
That's right.
happen.
And these
I guess,
emergencies never happen, right? They never happen on a Tuesday at noon. They
right.
happen on a Friday. They would happen tonight at 3 a.m. because it's a 3-day weekend. So tonight at 3 a.m., I expect to get a call. The wheels have fallen off somebody's bus and
Hmm.
people are at risk. And the managers are in Hawaii on vacation. And they should be on vacation. But the point is the facility has to practice without having daylight, without having the resources they could get during the day, without having the management capacity, because people are often gone. And yeah, but it's an interesting field that we've chosen, Bob. It's a very interesting field.
Yeah, I mean, well, I mean, and again, you got into it. You didn't pre-plan that you were going to be in indoor environmental work, right? That was never part of your life plan going into it
So I have
prior
what
to.
I call hero complex, Bob. So I want to help people. It gives
Okay.
me joy to help people, either to prevent something bad from happening or to help them when something bad is happening. The prevention side obviously is the goal, but
Sure.
you and I know that people don't
Sometimes.
often plan the prevention side. So I wanted to be a physician, I thought, and I worked in a dentist's office when I was a kid to see what that would be like to work in a clinical setting. And I didn't like it, but I still wanted to help people and I love science. So I thought, if I went to the environmental field, I could help people maybe that I never even have to meet. If you're a doctor, you have to meet the patient to help them. But if you're examining a building and you find there are, deficiencies or opportunities for improvement, you pick your half full, half empty, right? You could fix that. You could help the management fix that. You're protecting people that you never meet. and not just the people in the building today, but the people that will come to the building in the future. And so for me, that's very rewarding. And so I knew I wanted to be in a field that did something like that. Indoor air quality wasn't exactly, I didn't laser focus to get there, but it worked out, and I'm really happy. It's been a minute. It's almost 30 years now I've been doing this.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny how quick that goes by. For me, it's actually, oh my goodness, like over 35 now, which you're entering 35, which yeah, it went fast, right? I mean,
Right.
it's hard to figure. So one of the things you mentioned about your hero complex and helping. You've done a lot of volunteer work with various trade groups, trade organizations, and other things too, obviously. But let's talk a little bit to what you've done. You've served on the board of directors of the Indoor Air Quality Association (IAQA) for many years. Were you on the board of EIA as well, or I know you worked
I've been
did
on the
stuff with
board
them?
of directors of the EIA Arizona group. I have been on the advisory board for ACAC, which at the time was the American Indoor Air Quality Council. So I've injected myself into those groups, not because I think my opinion is better than other people, but I feel like if you don't get involved, you have no room to complain. You want to have You only have a certain amount of sway in your life, and you want to use that to make things better. To be involved is I think is important, and then you meet people, and even if it's just from a strict business standpoint. Some people say I don't have time to be involved in these trade organizations. I would say, well, do you have time to meet your next client or the next person who will refer you to your next client? Because any industry you're in is not that big. Word spreads, word of mouth, and a warm referral is gold. If you told somebody, hey, you need to use Derrick for this problem you're having, the vetting is done. They're going to call, and now
Right.
it's just a matter of when are we coming out to help you. So from that, it's great, and then you learn. It's important. I'll tell you a funny story. I don't know, maybe you won't think it's funny, but I was doing a project in Flagstaff. So I'm based in Phoenix. It's really hot most of the time in Phoenix. And so I went to this project in Flagstaff, which is up in the mountains.
Hmm.
And I'm looking at this door, and it has water damage on both sides of the door jamb at the bottom of the door. But it's got a covered porch, and there's no indication that rain could possibly get to this location. It's sloped well. And the realtor just kind of gave me a nudge and goes, "Hey, man, snowdrift." And I was like, "Snow? It's not on my radar." So
Oh, yeah,
it's
yeah.
important to meet people from around the world. In fact, IAQA has given me the opportunity to teach in India and Singapore, but it's important to meet people in other places that have different types of buildings, different problems, or similar problems, but maybe at a higher rate. We don't have to deal with humidity like people in Florida do. But if you don't know humidity, you're not a very good indoor environmental quality professional. So you want to talk to people who that's their cross to bear, right? The humidity cross is what you bear when you work in Florida. Here we have the heat cross, right? We deal with the heat, but it's important if you're involved in these organizations. One, you're making a difference.
Hmm.
Two, you're meeting people who can help you with your career. And three, you're constantly learning. And if you're not constantly learning, you're going to get left behind. You're not going to provide the best service to your customers.
Yeah, your professional education is an ongoing process. You're not all learned yet. You never get there. That's at that point when you stop learning, you really pretty much stop growing. And you're not moving. We met actually at, I think, the first time, I believe, at the American Indoor Air Quality Council Phoenix chapter meeting years and
Really?
years ago. I mean, we may have met before that at some other function, but it was probably in 2000.
Wow.
I mean,
That's
that we
been
actually interacted. It's I guess I think Charlie Wiles brought me out there. I actually spoke at the luncheon, at the chapter meeting. It was downtown Phoenix. I can't remember, some hotel. Can't remember where,
right.
but it was, yeah. So
Wow. Yeah, it's been a
small.
minute.
It's a small world.
It is. It is a small world. Yeah.
So, again, you've spent a lot of time working with these organizations, and obviously, I mean, and I did too. Back in my early days of my career, I spent a lot with NADCA. I mean, I was on that board for 11 years and chaired a lot of committees and spent a lot of time doing a lot of, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of volunteer hours that helped me learn a lot more, got me a lot more opportunity, to interact with people and yes, it certainly made contacts, no question about it. I mean, it's not to say it's self-serving. You're not doing it to be self-serving, but it's still there's benefits to being involved and working in an organization, I believe.
Sure.
No
And
doubt.
there are other organizations that are even not air quality related. I
Sure.
work with the California Association of Healthcare Facilities, the Arizona Healthcare Association. There's many trade organizations that you can become involved in that are ancillary or, to IAQ related work, but they need professionals with your expertise. So if there's a young person starting in this field, I would certainly recommend they look, you can't do it all at once. It's not fair to compare you and I to someone who's just starting out, because we've had years and years to look at these opportunities and move in and out of different organizations. Start right now doing something in a trade organization would be, I think, foolish for your career long term.
Oh, I totally agree with that. So, yeah, and I'm putting up Clark Safe Clark, because that's where you've spent a lot of your time, with that. And I noticed in your CV that you've got, and I mentioned this 20,000 indoor environmental projects. Wow. I mean, that's like and varied, right? Asbestos, across the gamut, really, right?
Yeah,
Um,
asbestos, lead, mold, anthrax, ricin, lead paint, sewage incursion. What's that smell? Carbon monoxide poisoning. It's a pretty diverse. There are lots of people who just focus on one thing, and that's fine. If you just want to do asbestos inspections, be the best damn asbestos
sure.
inspector you can be. For us, asbestos inspection is just a part of every job. If we go to a meth lab, we check for asbestos. If we go to a trauma scene or unintended death, we check for asbestos. If it's a mercury spill, we're checking for asbestos. So I think it's important for our clients, so that we have that diversity. So I don't have to send an asbestos inspector and a lead inspector and then somebody who can handle the biohazard issue. We want to be multi-lines experts. That's great for also employee retention. It keeps people constantly learning. It's always challenging. It's never Groundhog Day in our office. I'm sure it's the same in your office, right? It's never Groundhog Day. When the phone rings, I
No,
have no idea what's going to be on the
it's just always
other
crazy
call.
day in my office, though. It's like you never. I'm my life is more like Dick Van Dyke and Mary Poppins. It's like I have different hats on every day. I'm a video producer, show host one day, industry magazine publisher another day, indoor environmental consultant another day. I still get involved with commercial air duct cleaning, so I'm still involved
Okay.
with actual contracting work. And then there's life, your outside life, everybody has some interest. So yeah, every day is a little different.
But it's good. We have a good team. And I work with Clark Safe Clark, as you
Hmm.
mentioned, with your graphic there. And we have a
Hmm.
team of, we have chemists, microbiologists, mycologists, engineers, just a very diverse group of folks. And that allows us to pick a team. When a client calls with a problem or a question, we put a team together of the right experts to handle that. Because even though I may have expertise in a lot of things, we actually have a chemist, and I have expertise in a lot of things, but I actually have a mycologist on the team. So we gauge what's needed based on the needs of the client. And that's really nice to have that team approach. And Clark Safe Clark's been a good place for me to hang my hat for 22 years now. Crazy, but
Time goes by fast. I mean, I started my initial company. Well, I started with somebody else in '86 when I got into the industry, and then in 1990 I started IAQ Technologies, and that was look 32 years ago. That went
wow.
fast. Went super fast. Well, so you've got a new a new initiative that you're working on, and sewer gas solutions, which you mentioned to me. This has been in the works for a few years, and I'm going to let you describe it because I'll butcher it. But it's like bottom line is there's a lot of issues with dried out drains putting odors in spaces. All of us in the IAQ space at one time or another, if not on a regular basis, have been brought in to an issue of some odors in spaces and sewer gas related. So, tell us more about this.
So many years ago, I went to a hospital evacuation. So I got a call at 3 a.m, and they said, we have a natural gas leak and we can't find it. We've evacuated the hospital and we need your help. This gas company's here, the fire department's here, the facility owner and building engineers are all here scratching their head, and we can't go back in the building until somebody figures out what's going on, and we can't find it. And I said, okay, well, let me gather up an assistant and get all of our whiz bang equipment and come on out and see if we can help you. You never know if you're going to be able to help somebody or not. And I try not to set the expectation too high, but certainly if it's an air quality problem, we're the best qualified to find it, would be my pitch. So we show up, and sure enough, there's patients on ventilators out in the parking lot. Now it's winter, but it's a Phoenix winter, so it's not like a Buffalo, New York winter. But if you're on a ventilator, you want to be out in the parking lot, right? You don't want your brother or your mother or your wife on a ventilator out in the parking lot, And I always take my job seriously, but that night I was like, we better get this figured out, right? So put all the meters on a cart, push it in the building, pull it out, everything checks out. We kind of go room by room, zone by zone. And within just about 10 minutes, I'm using just a simple tool, which is a smoke pencil. And I'm smoking this floor drain, and air is rushing out of this 4-inch floor drain. I mean, it's pushing up at a pretty high rate. And the odor I detect is consistent with sewer gas. Although sewer gas doesn't always smell like poo, right? It can have varied odors because it depends on what's in the drain and what's upstream and downstream of your building. But so I gathered, the gas company representatives and the fire department and everybody in a big circle around me, and I smoked the drain, and you can see the smoke just rush up out of the floor. And then I take a pitcher of water and I pour it in the drain, and then I smoke it again, and the smoke just hovers. And I said, that'll be $5,000.
There you go.
But immediately the owner of the hospital fired 2 career facility guys with mortgages and kids. And I don't know that was fair, because whose job is it to fill the drain? Is it the trap primer's job? Is it the custodian's job? Is it the building engineer's job? I don't want to get into all that. But what I realized that night, and having done many projects before that, finding that, hey, you got to put water in that toilet, sir. Hey, you got to put water in that sink. That's why you have bad smells. That's why you have roaches coming in the building unchecked, or sewer flies. That's why your eyes and your nose are burning. Sewer gas is combustible as well.
Sure.
And sewer gas contains sulfur compounds. Methyl mercaptan is the additive to natural gas. So natural gas has no smell. And we add methyl mercaptan to it so that you can detect it at low concentrations. And so, because sewer gas contains methyl mercaptan, very common for people to think they have a natural gas leak. Now, you can have a natural gas leak. Not all, methyl mercaptan smells are sewer gas, but it certainly needs to be on your radar. And then lastly, sewer gas contains, hydrogen sulfide, sulfur dioxide, ammonia, water vapor, all things that cause corrosion. And we have seen fire alarms, fire panels, mirrors, plumbing fixtures corrode to such a degree that they fail. Cooling coils will fail, water pipes will rupture, fire panels will either not alarm when they need to, which is very scary, or they'll alarm falsely, which is also scary, because now you're moving people. I do a lot of work in vulnerable populations. And when you move people that are nearing the end of their journey, a high percentage of them, sometimes up to 30%, will die just because of the stress of the move. So I said, there's got to be a way. There's got to be a fix to this, such a common problem. Vacant homes, realtors have vacant homes that they're trying to sell. Nobody wants to buy a stinky house.
No.
Property managers, commercial property managers have vacant suites, and we've been to so many where the sewer gas comes into vacant suite A, and then because air moves, because everybody has penetrations in their firewalls, which they shouldn't, but they do, they'll get that sewer gas traveling into adjacent suites, So I said, there's got to be a way. So I got one of my partners, Paul Anderson, is a chemist. I've known him. We actually went to college together, undergrad, and so he and I worked on finding a solution. We started with mechanical things, but mechanical things require an installation, and there's many different kinds of pipes, and so that wasn't working. So we thought there's got to be a solution. By solution, I mean something you can pour in the drain that will keep that water from evaporating or supplant the water. We weren't sure at the time. So after 9 years of research and development, and my garage looking like a scene out of Breaking Bad with mock-up P-traps and jars of goo, we came up with the right solution. We submitted our patent, and I got word this last month that we are going to get our non-provisional patent for sewer gas solutions. And that is just a product that you fill your trap with water, regardless if it's in a freezer, if it's in a walk-in cooler, if it's in your house or a commercial building or your garage in a Phoenix summer. You fill the trap with water, you pour the solution in, and it's an evaporation inhibitor. It creates a barrier at the top of the water, so that trap won't dry. And I think for the benefit of some people who don't know, the only thing that separates the living space from the sewer is that water in that U-shaped pipe that's often called a P-trap or a trap. There's different terminology, but everyone that's on this call or everyone that's watching this program has looked under a sink sometime in their life and seen that U-shaped pipe. What they may not realize is that U-shaped pipe is also under your tub and behind your washing machine in the wall, and under your shower, and even your toilet has a trap.
Yeah, a toilet for that matter.
So if you pour our product on and cover the surface of the water, it won't let the water evaporate for up to a year. Now, we tell people 3 to 6 months, but and what's great about the product is, again, we spent years working on this. So I can tell you 10,000 things that don't work. And I can tell you some things that work, but you don't want to use because they're flammable, or they cross-react with bleach when somebody pours it down the drain, or they congeal, or they damage the pipe, or they stain the toilet, or they grow bugs, or they grow microorganisms. So we came up with the right solution. I call it the magic goo. I can give you more information if you want, but essentially, it checks all the boxes. You could drink it. It would give you diarrhea, gastrointestinal distress, but you could drink it and not.
I'll take your word for that. I'm not going to,
It actually smells good. And then it's not damaging to your skin. So it really is, I don't want to say miracle product because that's overselling.
No, but it seems like it's a very, I'm going to say simple solution, but I'm not trying to minimize it because it's really hard to come up with the right chemical to do this with. But I mean, the premise is that you're coming up with something that stops the evaporation. So it's an elegant solution to a complex problem that doesn't seem that complex, but we've tried over the years, baby oil, different things, and nothing works very well. The other thing too is you're in a climate in the Southwest where you're in cooling mode probably all year round, right? So you're always so your condensate drains off your mechanical equipment, or your traps there are probably always having moisture come out. But here in the Northeast, for example, when we get into the heating months, we dry the traps out on all our mechanical equipment. Now you backdraft sewer gas in the mechanical system.
That's right.
Well, that happens a lot.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know there's a P-trap on your condensate line.
They're supposed to be.
Yeah, they're supposed to be. Exactly.
I mean, it's not always.
So that's really, the key is, I tell people, look, you don't need our product because all you have to do is go around and fill up all your plumbing fixtures with water on a regular basis. In Phoenix, that's once a week, especially in the summer. But that takes a lot of effort, and somebody's got to remember to do it. And we know that, labor is scarce and expensive. And so with this product, you can kind of set it and forget it, if you will. So yeah, it's been good. I mean, even, we have snowbirds here in Arizona, and we would get calls from pest control companies saying that these people who are coming back to their home after being away for the summer their homes are filled with roaches, and the owners wanted, a significant amount of pesticides applied. The pest control companies were, saying, we don't feel comfortable doing that. We think there's a reason that these bugs are coming in. And I said, yeah, it's because the traps are dry and you have an unfettered access to the living space from the sewer. And so, it's a good product. It's inexpensive. You don't need it on the traps you're using. Some people will ask, if you pour it on one side of the trap, if you want to bring the graphic back up,
I will.
you'll see there's two sides to the trap. There's the room side or the sink side, right? And then there's the sewer side. And you really only need the goo, the sewer gas solution, on the sink side. If you run the sink a few times, some will flush through, and eventually you flush it out. So you don't have to do anything once you start using that sink again. But the evaporation and condensation on the sewer side of the trap is kind of at equilibrium. So you're not losing water to that side. You lose water to the room side. And as you mentioned in Phoenix, because we're running our air conditioners all the time, one, we have low humidity in general.
Mm-hmm.
Two, air conditioners, cool and dehumidify air, and they move air. And that air movement of very dry air dries our traps just like that. And, we're using the sink example, but it's the same thing for the tub or the shower or the toilet. Most people recognize the toilet because it's a visual. You can see the toilet water level has dropped.
Yeah, but if you think about it though, Derek, not necessarily like in an area that's like not used very often, like maybe, you have a bathroom in a basement in a property and people aren't going in there, and I'll be honest with you, we have I'm saying this from personal experience. We have the fourth bathroom in our house down in the basement that never gets used, like literally doesn't get used for, months on end.
months, yeah.
And I've walked down there on more than one occasion and walked in and found the bowl dry.
Wow. Well, I know a product, Bob, I can
Yeah.
refer you to. Yeah, so we were lucky that we got sewergassolutions.com is the website. I didn't think we would get a sewer gas themed website, but we were lucky and that was not taken. So, and people can order it online. Once we get our patent, I'd like to license it to someone who makes products on a grander scale. Right now, we're making it in 500-gallon batches in my commercial building here in Phoenix.
She's gotten away from the Walter White manufacturing, at least. That was just
Yeah,
for the beta. That was for the beta version.
Well, and it's expensive. I mean, listen, I'm an environmental consultant. I'm not a manufacturer.
Right.
And when we were trying to find the right combination of goo, we had to buy stuff. And when you buy stuff in bottles like this per ounce, it's expensive. And so the first batch we made was $60 a gallon to make. But when you buy it in 55-gallon drums or 1,000-gallon, containers, the price per unit comes way, way down. But I think someone who makes it professionally and distributes it professionally will have a better success. We just want to solve the problem.
What
like
is
I
that
said,
retailing at now? I have to ask the question because we have actually one of the question on the community on that.
Oh, it's $38 for a bottle. A bottle will do about 30 sinks.
Oh,
so
that's quite a few. Okay.
If you bought a bottle and you were a realtor, you could do a couple of houses with it. So it's not expensive. That's our pricing. I'm assuming if someone licenses it, they may charge more, but that's up to them.
It's capitalism.
But yeah, and it's it works. It solves. We are in the business of solving problems, Bob.
Absolutely.
I mean, for 35 years, that's what you've done. For 30 years, that's what I've done.
Yeah.
We don't know anything different. So this is just one more tool in people's toolbox. Now, obviously, it's self-serving because I invented it. It's our patent, Paul Anderson and I. It's our company, but I'm proud that it solves this problem because, again, I don't want to see any more hospitals evacuated when they don't have to be. You know.
It's a simple fix that seems like it's a really great idea. So I'm going to move on to we got a question for you.
Awesome.
How has the IAQ market changed since you started? Since you've been here 30 years, what's changed?
Great question. So I'll give you a couple of different variations. The first one is it's cyclical. When I first got into the business, asbestos was the hot topic. So asbestos went up like a rocket ship and then came down. You know, it was $250 for a TEM, and now you can get them for 60. You were waiting 3 weeks for a TEM, now you can get them same day. So asbestos wave, lead-based paint wave, phase 1 environmental site assessment wave, mold wave, COVID wave, right? So there's always a flavor of the month that's coming in strong, and people are going to jump on that bandwagon. And that's both good and bad, because people who dedicate their lives to this industry get a lot of work, but you also have all these fly-by-night people who are trying to take advantage of the situation, folks coming in. But so one, it's cyclical. Two, the technology is off the chart. You know, I mean, I used to carry milk crates in the trunk of my car filled with standards. Now everything's on your phone. We used to take pictures. Anything that was important, you'd take 3 35mm pictures of, because you didn't know when you developed that film, and then glued that picture into your report if it was going to be a good shot or not. Now you have your camera. The camera takes amazing photos, right? We used to print blueprints and mail them to everybody that's in the project, and then they would mark them up by hand and mail them back to the draftsperson. Oh boy, I gotta be careful. And then they would make a new copy, a revised copy with everyone's comments, and then mail those out. Now it's all digital. You know, it's instant. Meters. There's not only are there meters for just about everything that you can hold in your hand, but they're getting smaller, cheaper. They have telemetry. You know, I'm working on a lithium battery fire right now, and I can get on my phone and I can look at what's the temperature, what's the humidity, what are the VOCs, what's the particulate levels at various size ranges.
Right, in real time.
Yeah. Right now.
Yeah.
And it's pretty amazing. You know, when we have to do outdoor air quality and there's an evacuation, you know, you'd have to figure out what's the wind speed, wind direction. Now we just drop a met station and we know exactly the wind speed, wind direction, not only at that moment, but we can do a 10-minute average. We can do a 24-hour average. We can do a 12-hour average. So the technology is pretty amazing. You know, people worry that industrial hygienists will not be necessary in the future, because you know, you can somebody can mail you an instrument, you can put it in your building, and it'll tell you everything.
There's still interpretation.
That's
that's the thing. It's like you're not going to AI your way through this. You're really not. I mean, maybe part of the data deciphering and and that sort of thing maybe can be AI, but there's still there's this tactile thing, right? There's still the client consultant, or client contractor. There's things that you have to do, I think, person to person, right?
Right. Well, I think the key is the takeaway for me is there's nothing that you or I are going to tell a client that they couldn't actually look up online. Most likely, they could find the standard. They could find how to do these samples. They could find ways to interpret them. But you know what you can do and what I can do? One, I can tell you what it means right now. I can tell you what applies to your building in that jurisdiction, because it's different in Maricopa County than it is in Pinal County, right? And based on experience, I can tell you here's the array of options at your disposal, and this one or these two are the best for your specific scenario, the time of year, the type of population you have. A school is different than a senior living facility, which is different than a hospital, which is different than a manufacturing facility. And so that's where the expertise value will never be lost, is being able to apply the information to that scenario.
Absolutely. Well, you're not going to get that degree of specificity on some boilerplate documentation that gets, spit out. You're just not. You can't getting like just a bulleted list of it could be this and this. That doesn't really fix a situation for a client. So
and we get a lot of internet experts now. They say, "Well, I read online this." And I go, "Okay, well, yeah, but have you considered these 50 things that I've been doing my whole life?" "Oh no, I didn't consider that." Well, that's why you're paying me to help you. And but yeah, so there have been a lot of changes in the industry, but some are good and some are bad. I'm an old school guy. I like to still get a check mailed to me. I don't like the digital exchange of money. I
You
like
like
to
the
meet the
tactile feel
client.
of that check? I
Yeah,
mean,
I like to meet the client. I like to
I
shake
do too.
people's hand. I don't like virtual. I mean, this is an amazing technology. This tool we have. We're thousands of miles apart or more.
Oh,
Um,
many thousands. We're in diagonally across the United States.
yeah, a couple thousand miles. But so this makes that communication feasible. But I would rather be sitting next to you, raising a glass, shaking your hand. Um, but we work with what we have, and I'll probably see you at the IAQA meeting in Texas this year. I'm assuming.
Most likely. Yeah. We'll see. I actually have a an abstract in with Susan. We submitted one.
Uh,
Yeah, I haven't been there. Haven't presented in a few years. So we'll see. But I'll probably be there anyway. That's one of the things with Healthy Indoors. We try to make the rounds of it, as many of them as we can get to. But it is, it's cost prohibitive. I can only be at so many conferences in a given year, so I have to pick and choose every year. But most
I don't know
likely.
how you do it.
And
Yeah, I
and
don't know
that's
how you
gonna be that's in Austin this year, right?
I believe it is in Austin, Texas.
Yeah,
Yes,
see
sir.
and I think it's at the hotel right on 6th. So that kind of draws me, 6th Street, Austin, you know. Not hard, you don't have to twist my arm too hard to get there. Well, so again, your long perspective in this industry is interesting, because again, and I think we both had the opportunity to be here for a while and see trends and changes. And one of the things that you mentioned, these cycles, these different, like whatever the problem du jour or the focus du jour of the industry, it does open the door to unproven technologies, unproven service providers, because there's especially, I mean, the pandemic is a classic example of that, right? Because there's this crisis initially in early 2020. Nobody's really sure what to do. We really don't know all the mechanisms on how the transfer and how this virus becomes an illness, right away. I mean, there was a lot, a lot of different conflicting information coming out, so it opens the door for a lot of, you know, snake oil,
Oh
for lack
yeah,
of a
oh
better
yeah.
term.
Or just, I give a great example. We design airborne infection isolation rooms, and but just throwing up a sheet of plastic across a hallway is not making an isolation wing or an isolation room. You have to understand supply and return. For example, you have to understand air movement in buildings. You know, I have had COVID 3 times, probably because I'm doing thousands and thousands of fit testing of people who are in healthcare, and they're constantly breathing on your face because you're 2 inches from them when you're fit testing them. But um, I ended up in an airborne infection isolation room, and so from the patient perspective, I actually got to see what a bad design and I would say a less than stellar design looked like, right? So if there was a negative air machine or a HEPA filtration device, AFD air filtration device, you pick it depends what industry and what you call it,
Yeah.
but a HEPA filtered fan in my room right next to my bed. And it was very loud, all right? Two, it was pulling 500 CFM of air across my body 24 hours a day. So my skin was drying out, my eyes were drying out. I was cold when I didn't need to be cold, right? Um, because you're in an isolation room, you're isolated. So I was not able to see anybody. I said, where's your patient wellness program? Where's the rabbi or the priest or the social worker or the family member that's scheduled to call me once a day and say, hey, Bob, how are you? Not like physically, but like here and
Yeah, yeah.
here, and I speak respirator. I mean, I've seen people in respirators not my whole life, my whole career, right? So I'm
That's
not
funny.
afraid of
Speaking
people in
speaking of
respirators.
respirator, I love that.
But these doctors would come in and you couldn't hear them
Right.
and you couldn't see their expression. And I thought, what if I was a 70-year-old woman, not in the infection control business? Well, how would I feel about this? I would have been scared to death.
Oh, it's
That whole
awful.
experience,
Eh,
so with with these emerging pandemics, they're going to continue to occur. The good news is the fundamentals that we learn, that we use, of isolation, of hygiene, of respiratory protection, they work. Even if you don't know what the goo is, if you know what the cootie, I like to use the term cootie, even if you know what the cootie is, there are certain things you can do or should do to protect yourself and the community you serve. As you learn more about the organism, you can fine tune that. And maybe you make the wrong decision in the beginning. I work in a lot of lawsuits, and one of the best advice pieces I give to my customers or other consultants is write down what you know when you learned it, because some other opposing expert is going to be given a file, and it's going to contain, here's what happened and here's what they did, and they're going to say, they shouldn't have done that. Well, yeah, that's easy for you to say because now you know all the facts. But you know what? Hour one, the client called and said we had one issue, and they were wrong. There was 10 issues, and they were going to say it's one building, and they were wrong. It was 10 buildings.
Right.
So yeah, what we did hour one was absolutely inadequate. But
Well,
we
it's a
were
starting
only,
point. This process is dynamic. we don't know the answers going in.
yeah. So you learn things, and as you learn things, you modify. I tell people all the time, make a decision. You may have heard me say this before. Don't stand in the crossroads. Turn left, turn right, go backwards, go forwards, but don't be paralyzed by analysis. Move in a direction. It may be the wrong direction, but you're certainly not going to achieve any better outcome if you stand still. And that goes for active shooter, that goes for infection control, that goes for if you're walking across the street.
No,
Don't
I
get
mean
run over in the crossroads.
it makes total sense. It stand, inaction is always wrong. It's always the wrong move.
Yeah, and I'm not saying knee-jerk reactions are the way to go, but to not move. A lot of people say, well, we don't want to do anything until we know everything. Well, there's a good chance we won't know everything
Right.
ever. So, I don't think doing nothing is the right choice.
Mm-hmm.
And in the end, we're consultants. I mean, we give advice. I was in a meeting. I was giving advice to I can't say who, but a large company. We'll just say a large company. I'm in a boardroom with a bunch of corporate muckety mucks, and they called me there because someone did some Legionella testing. They found Legionella pneumophila in some of their water. And I said, well, it's detectable. It's not at a concentration above the commonly cited action level. I said, you should certainly improve your water quality, but I don't think this is an emergent, a situation. We'll help you through it. We'll make a plan and we'll help you through it. And they said, no, we want to let our employees know. And I said, well, that's up to you, but I don't advise it because there's no reason to tell them. One, it's very low concentration. Two, there's no, people get Legionnaires' disease by inhaling water droplets. Nobody's inhaling water droplets in an office. It's not like they're taking showers or going in a spa at their office. But I said, ultimately it's your decision. So they chose to send out an email. They drafted it and sent it out. And within 10 minutes, there was a helicopter flying around the building. And it was a news
Of course. Yeah.
And they got the IT guy to come up. And this is speaking to technology changes. The IT guy knew exactly when the email went out and exactly when that email was forwarded by who. Several people forwarded it to news outlets. And immediately it was, company X has Legionella problem. And I was like, oof, that's an I told you so moment. But
yeah,
again, I'm not saying they shouldn't have, that was their decision to share.
Sure,
but,
sure.
The technology is different. And, but we advise them and they either take that advice or they don't. Right. So in that case, they didn't.
But that's the best you can do with your client. I mean, and I always say that too, like, even, schools, you're doing some sampling for mold or whatever. And I said, you before you go down the path of doing sampling, what is your plan going to be if the results come back adverse?
Right.
Well, and there's always this attitude we don't have to tell anybody. It's like, oh no, it'll be discovered. It's like if you take the samples, there's there's a chain of custody. This is very discoverable information. So you already need to think of how you're going to handle that worst case scenario, right? You should already have the mechanisms in place for this is our damage control. This is how we're going to we're going to say this and this, and we're going to this could be our steps. But if you just go in there and just like in this case, throw out the email. And now what do you do?
Right.
Now you're in full blown crisis mode.
Yeah, knowing what you're going to do with the sample results is critical. I mean, I because I'm involved in these organizations, I counsel a lot of my competition, and
Hmm.
One fella called me one day and he said, "Hey, I went to this job and smells like ammonia. I sampled TO15. I took an aliquot of air, sent it to the lab, had TO15 analysis. I said, but you just said you smelled ammonia." He said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, TO15 is toxic organic 15. By definition, it has to contain carbon to be organic, right? So ammonia is NH3. It doesn't contain any carbon. You'll never find
Right.
ammonia if you
And
do a
TO15.
TO15. And so, that is one thing that we have to help continue to make our colleagues and ourselves better. But then I said, and when you get a result, what are you going to say? What's the various levels of, "Oh no, there's nothing to be done here," or "Oh no, we need to leave the building right now"? I mean, you need to have that discussion with your client before you collect any samples. I use the analogy because I testified in many trials. I've been deposed many times, and there's a value to sampling, but sometimes you don't need to sample.
Hmm.
And if you do sample, you're putting bullets into the gun of the plaintiff attorney, or
Potentially
so
you are. Yeah. I mean, and not that it's going to give you any positive outcome, I mean, like if you're already going to go down the path of, you have a pretty good idea what the corrective measures are. Sometimes that analytical information at the onset is not necessarily what you want there. That's going to drive the show. I
sure. If
agree
you
with
see visible mold growth in a building
you. Yeah,
and you
there's
take
a
an
mold
air
problem. There's
sample,
a mold problem if there's mold on the wall.
yeah, if you take an air sample and it comes back balanced, are you going to say, "Go ahead and leave that mold there"?
Right,
No.
right, right.
So you have to, I try to teach my team, samples are a tool to help you answer a question. Ask the question and then find a way to answer it. If you need the sampling, you need the analytical to answer the question, then do it. But don't just sample for sampling's sake. One, it wastes clients' resources. We want to be good stewards of the funding of our clients, right? I mean, we're obviously in the business, so we want to make money, but we want a client for life, and we want to give them a good value. And then if you're not answering a question, sampling just can convolute things. Like I said, if there's mold on the wall and you take an air sample and the air sample is balanced, you're still going to address the mold on the wall. So what value did it have?
But
It
you're gonna
either
have an argument with somebody saying maybe you don't need to. There's no
right,
exposure,
right,
which is like, okay, now you're getting into like you're creating situations that are not helping.
yeah. It either is affecting the air, was affecting the air, or will affect the air, and that makes a potential health risk. So we're going to address the visible mold growth. But yeah, it's just
As a consultant, I mean, do you find yourself being drawn into? I mean, you must almost the spin control a lot of times, right? With different entities when actually advising them on how they're going, how they present the information, so they don't create total hysteria and making things go explode when it's not necessarily warranted. You don't need to evacuate the building. You don't need to get this crazy.
well,
And so you find
I try to use this analogy. I say, listen, so I have an interview question, and hopefully I don't embarrass myself or embarrass you. But what do you call someone who tells the truth 99 times out of 100? A damn liar,
a damn liar. Yeah,
right?
yeah, it's not telling the
And
truth.
in our business, you have to be honest when it
Right.
helps your client or if it buries your client. Our job is to tell the truth, give accurate information so people can make decisions. Sometimes the truth we provide is expensive and uncomfortable for
Right.
our client, but it's so important because if you don't get it right, everything you've done previously comes into question. Everything you do in the future will come into question. So that's the most important thing, is to be honest. I don't know is an acceptable answer, right? I don't know. People say, but you're supposed to know. Well,
No, nobody knows everything, and you can't. There's no way to have every piece of data. You're still making you're making generalizations, and you have to. I mean, because there's missing pieces in every puzzle when you do an investigation. You don't have them all.
yeah. So
Yeah.
so that's mission critical is giving good information and then answering the question, and what your client does with it sometimes is you know it's not what you would expect or not what you
Right.
think they should do. But again, that's ultimately it's their choice. I mean, if they're doing something that's illegal or I think someone's going to get killed, I will put my foot down.
Mm-hmm.
But I like to tell people what I want is credibility.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say, hey, Bob, you know what? You need to burn that building to the ground. I just want you to reach in your pocket for a lighter and hit it, right? Or if I say, hey, Bob, you know what? It's all good. I want you to walk away satisfied. That, but the credibility I want is not blind credibility. I want the credibility of Derrick looked at all the options. He looked at all the available information. He's weighed it and applied it to our situation, and he's made a recommendation. And we can hang our hat on that recommendation.
Based on your experience and expertise. That's why they hire you.
So, but yeah, when you tell them to burn a building down, sometimes it's bad news, right? But I've never told anybody to burn the building down. We're talking things like, evacuate the building, right? Or vacate the building. That's a pretty tall ask. I had actually a client where they got a white powder in the mail and a death threat, and they thought it was potentially anthrax, so they called us out. And I said, you should evacuate the building. They said, you don't know if it's anthrax or not. I said, well, either do you. So
right. And that was when that all was going on, the anthrax scare stuff. So I mean, it's like you don't know. I mean,
I said, so what do you want to do? I mean, out of an abundance of caution, I would evacuate the building. They chose not to. And I wrote them a letter that said, we're severing our relationship with you because we've advised you to do something that we think is important and you're choosing not to do it. It was not anthrax, turns out. But again, I don't know at hour one, so you have to sometimes make tough decisions, but it's always interesting. A guy was making ricin in his apartment, and I don't think he was looking for the next cure for cancer.
Probably not.
So we get called on some pretty exotic jobs. That's kind of what Clark Safe Clark is known for. There's lots of folks that can do an asbestos survey for you. There's not a lot of lithium battery fire folks out there, but yeah, it is definitely always an interesting ride.
So again, Clark Safe Clark, where you've been for many years, and since you got in this indoor environmental industry, right? Is that where you started?
No, I didn't start there.
Sorry.
I started with CSC in 2000, but I worked for several environmental consulting firms and a national abatement firm prior to that. And I ended up landing at CSC in January 5th of 2000, and I've been there ever since. I worked in their Los Angeles area office, and then I moved to Phoenix, got married and moved to Phoenix and opened the office here. And it's been a good ride. I mean, there are many iterations of a happy life that you could have. Absolutely. I don't know, but I've never missed a meal, and I'm generally healthy, knock on wood, and I try to have a work-life balance. You do all the things you can to. I tell people that I turned 50. I wrote a book. It's not a book for sale. I just wrote a book. And I gave it to people at my birthday party. And the theme of the book, basically, Bob, is whatever it is you think you need to do with your life, you should get busy doing that, because no tomorrow is promised. And there's no sexy way to take off your socks. So that's kind of the
boy. I love it. Well, Derrick, again, Sewer Gas Solutions, your new or evolving product that it's been a decade almost in the works getting here, but a great solution seems to be something that's very well needed, and again, find out more about that at sewergassolutions.com, and I'm even throwing up your little email too, so they could reach out to you if they would like to. And so this has been great. We ran out of time, as we always do. I knew this in our pre-show. I said this. There's no way I'm going to feel cheated after 60 minutes regardless, because there's too much to speak with you about, so we have to have you back on again.
Well, anytime, but it's always a pleasure. I appreciate what you do. The industry should appreciate what you do. you're a staple, and it's
I'm a staple. I'm like
you're
rice and beans. I'm the rice and beans of indoor air quality. Well,
well,
I
I
mean,
mean,
that's better than calling me the Ryan Seacrest of indoor environmental stuff because I'm
did
heading
somebody
down
call
that
you
path too.
that?
Yeah, I've heard it 3 times this week, and it's really starting to worry me a little bit because, 'cause that's not necessarily a positive connotation.
I
But,
don't know. He's very successful at what he
well,
does.
yes,
Maybe you should
yes,
compliment.
yes, but,
I don't
it
know Ryan, but
I don't either. I
but
don't either.
he seems to be doing whatever it is he wants to do.
Exactly, exactly. So anyway, Derrick Denis, always a pleasure to speak with you. Hope we get to see each other in person soon. I mean, at some industry event. It's been too long.
I
Been
look
way too
forward to
long.
shaking your hand, my friend. I look forward to
Exactly. I will do that too. So, we'll be back again next week. We're next Thursday. We actually have a pre-recorded show with Charlie Wiles, who's the founder of ACAC, and we'll talk a little bit about some of the stuff that he's done. He's been around a long time in the industry too, and really looking forward to sharing that show with you. Also, wanted to remind everyone that, of course, we are, have launched a long time ago the Healthy Indoors global online community, and we you can get to that at global.healthyindoors.com. Many of you are watching the show there now. If you're not, it's a great place to go. You should go to the community. It'll give you the opportunity to network with other people like minds around the world in your industry, in other silos, the indoor environmental industry. We have a ton of free public access content like this show and many other shows, but so much more if you actually become a full-fledged member of the community. So highly recommend you do that. Um, we'll see you again next Thursday. Same bat time, same bat channel here for the Healthy Indoors live show. Until then, I'm Bob Krell. Stay healthy and stay safe.